I can take, let's say, if a student uses their notes or anything like that. So the time limitations on the quiz is what I really attempt to adhere to keep us, let me say, honest, because in 20 minutes or so, it's either what you know or what you don't know. If anything, you didn't, let's say, take any notes or perhaps didn't study, it would take longer for that, for you to seek out the answers to the quiz. So it is to help cut down on perhaps, let's say, students pulling up dual screens and looking at their notes or everything, is that time limitation. So I am a little strict with the time. But I am aware, wink, wink, that some safeguards there is just, it's just impossible for me to have in place in this remote learning or digital setting. So hopefully we all did well. A lot of you guys asked me about scoring. When will the quiz be scored? How soon will you know? I can score this afternoon. The questions are pretty straightforward, so it can be a pretty easy turnaround time on that. So you guys can expect your responses for Wednesday's class, okay? You guys did see that out of 30 points, so each question is worth 5 points. But I do like to go in and read your responses rather than have it graded automatically, because sometimes I give points if I can tell that students are, you know, if I can tell that they know it, but maybe struggling to articulate it, I sometimes can give points in those instances. But I myself like to go through and read each response, you know, myself, to determine points, you know, how much points that student will get for their answer. So give me until Wednesday to get a response on that. All right. Awesome. So what do you guys think about the quiz? Relatively easy. What do we think about the format? Was it easy to access from the link? What do you guys think? Not bad. I see you, Caesar.
It was good.
Okay. All right. Good, good. Okay. Yeah, the format, you know what, Leslie, I may play around with that format. Because this was my first time doing what do they call it? Microsoft Forms. And I normally like forms, but it did let me know that it would automatically read your emails. And then when I kind of went in, I didn't see emails always attached. So that kind of made me a little bit worried. In addition to what we normally do in Brightspace. So those are my two forums, but I understand you on that, Leslie. All right, moving on, because in the interest of time, we do have things we need to discuss today. Last time we saw each other, we were introduced to our writing assignment, essay number 1. So I have a poll I'm going to launch really quickly. I want to just poll the class to see where we are with that assignment. So let me launch this poll. You guys take a couple of moments, let's say a minute at most, to select your response to the poll. And it's anonymous, so it's not that I'm targeting anybody. If you haven't selected a topic or if you haven't started research, it won't pinpoint you individually, but do be honest in your response, okay?
Ms. Cole, I have a question.
Sure, Faith.
By any chance, did you see my message in chat? I think I sent it privately.
All right, let me check. I didn't see it. Hold on. Was it sent earlier? Maybe I missed it.
It says 2:22. That was the time.
Oh, so it was a while ago. Okay, so let me scroll up. Hold on. Yeah, I see it, Faith. Okay, I see it. Okay, so let me respond back to you in chat. Well, I can let everybody know. This may be something everybody is wondering about. So it's asking about the when you finished the quiz and how it said your results was 0 out of 30. Yeah, now that will automatically happen because I didn't include the key in the quiz. So they are pulling the 0 from 30 because they don't have anything to connect your answers to. So it can't register the points. That's because I set it up to where I grade it manually. So it's okay if it says 0 out of 30. It's just not connecting to a key and what you put in as your result. So that's why that's there. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I got about 17 out of 19 students completed the poll. I think this is okay. Check, sorry. All right, good. So Benito, I got you back. Okay. So I do have about 2 more students who need to complete, but if we don't, that's okay. Let's take a look at what we have. All right, so again, this is my opportunity to kind of get in your business. The homework over the weekend was nothing more than start research, begin the research portion of the first argument essay assignment of the semester. If you guys don't remember totally, let me pull up the assignment sheet, but let's see first of all. So I can tell that just based on here, and let me share my results so you guys can kind of see the results of the polling. So for topics, it looks like 60% of students are writing on the topic about the protest. Are they effective? And it's asking a specific question, not are protests effective in general, but are they effective in bringing about change, especially to the issue of police brutality, racial injustice. So a lot of the protests that we have seen in the past 6 months or that we've seen unfold since May, I want to say Memorial Day weekend with the murder of George Floyd, we have seen those protests spark all across the nation, right? And in a lot of cases, they have been pretty much ignited ever since that incident in May. So the question is, do you feel that these protests, that they're effective, that they are actually bringing about change in that issue? So each protest is about a specific issue. For the issue of police brutality, racial injustice, do you feel protests are effective to bring about change? So good, I see about 60% of us are writing on that. We kind of maybe didn't really want to touch that inequality between male and female athletes. But I do want to let you know, if you haven't made a topic selection as of yet, consider that one, this whole idea of inequalities, especially in light of recent events of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her passing this over the weekend. She was a detrimental influence in the whole arena of inequality in terms of pay, inequality in terms of discriminatory practices between male and females, also in terms of religious, LGBTQ context. So she really championed inequality. So I think there's lots of current debate sparking up in her passing that I think you guys could find lots of research, lots of information to help speak to your position on that. So with the inequality between the athletes, what is leading to this inequality in pay, in media coverage, in popularity or audience? I think that's a pretty current debate to discuss. This is one I get into constantly with my male sons. So where we debate, inequalities or things like that, especially in terms of gender. They have strong opinions um, as to why, let's say, they feel that men's basketball, the NBA, is more popular than the WNBA. Lots of opinions as to why they feel that those athletes may be paid more. Male athletes paid more than their female counterparts, etc. Also, this is something to bring up, especially where I asked you guys, what was your favorite sports team, right? Who was your favorite sports team? A lot of you guys brought up, soccer, right? You mentioned soccer teams. I know I saw Barcelona, things like that. Somebody brought up the women's team, and in the debate of, should women, athletes be paid uh, the same as, equal pay for equal work, as their male counterparts. I want you guys to consider, if you are writing, I only see I have 3 who so far have committed to the inequality between athletes, male and female athletes, but important to keep up. This debate was sparked recently with the women's soccer team going on to win, nationally. They compete in the Olympics. They win globally, right? So why are those athletes who are excelling on the field, why are they being paid in some cases 4 times less than their male counterparts, right? So this debate really came up with the popularity of the women's soccer team. So lots of good information out there about that. All right, implications of stereotype threat. I got about 4 on that. This is interesting because students get to take this argument in whatever direction they want to take it. You get to apply what stereotype threat you plan to discuss, as well as the implications it has on a particular group, right? So a little bit more freedom with the implications of stereotype threat um, as with the other 2. So we'll talk about that. What are your primary search engines? What are you using for research? I really brought this question to the forefront because the weekend was all about research. And I want to make sure we are familiar with other search engines besides just Google. So the majority of us will always go to Google. If you use Google Chrome as your, main, I don't even know what they call that. Like your main go-to. I put Bing here too. Sometimes Bing is what we check in under. Try to look outside of Google alone. Try to look outside of Bing or just those basic search engines. Since we are attempting to add credibility to ourselves, and let me go ahead and stop share on this. I have 0 on Microsoft Academic. That's okay, but let me get rid of this. Let me share something with you guys. Hold on. Last week, I shared on our Brightspace page, I shared research-worthy search engines. So just to kind of remind you guys that that's there, you want to look at credible sources, especially when you are attempting to persuade or convince an audience. So in this class, in the teaching of how to argue and argue effectively, a effective mode of argument is to be really clear and credible in your research. If you only look at, let's say, Wikipedia, my eyebrow will automatically wrinkle in that this information may not be that reliable. If I know that you are researching on Google and you are, let's say, quoting from an opinion piece, well, that's okay, but that opinion alone is not strong enough to persuade or convince. You will need to have some type of evidence, concrete evidence. And the best place to find that concrete evidence, it will be outside of Google. It'll be outside of Bing and what I call those, basic search engines. So give me 1 second. Let me show you guys really quickly from my screen, just to remind you. I posted it last week, but I know with us posting things constantly, it may get lost in the shuffle. Mm, hold on, it's pulling up. But now that you've kind of done a preliminary search on Google or Bing or wherever search engine you use, now let's step it up a notch. And let's take a look at more academic, more results that could be found in, what do I call it? Academic, as well as credible search engine. So look here, under content, you guys see to the left menu, do you see where it says, hold on. Oh, not the reading. Research, scholarly search engines. This is where I want us to go. And I know that we may have in the past relied on Google, but as your audience, kind of keep in mind an audience, I'm looking for a little bit more substantial research. So I don't kind of want to read what someone has wrote in a blog or what someone had kind of just wrote in the comment section. That's normally what you'll get on Google. You'll get blog content, you get opinion pieces, but you want to really get credible sources that come from, you know, the academians, those who have done research, those whose expertise is rooted in this information. That tends to be more compelling and more likely to persuade or convince your audience. So remember, if it's all about winning, if traditional argument is rooted in winning, what can help you win is reliable, credible research. Okay, so consider the search engines here: Microsoft Academic, Google Scholar. There's one called RefSeek, and that's called references. RefSeek also is really important. So it's all listed here, but I am challenging us to step our research game up, step up how we research. Not Google alone is what I call a basic search, but we want to do more advanced searches, okay? So all right, with that being said, something I want to share with you guys today, now that we are getting into the writing of our paper. So let me share really quickly the assignment sheet. A couple things to remind you guys of. This assignment is due Monday, next Monday, so a week from today. So over the weekend, research, gathering how we feel about the issue, where we stand on the topic, what others have said about it, because a major part of research isn't just you looking to see what you can use for your argument. A major part of research is also you looking at what has your opponent said about this. If I may have someone in my audience who will disagree with me, who is already a dissenter, how can I reach that person? What can I do in order to address their concerns or how they may feel about it, and use that in order to persuade or convince them? So you want to study your opponent. You want to look at what they've said about it, and perhaps think of ways that you can either address that or challenge what others may believe or others may argue, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about the rebuttal. Oh yeah, the poll, Jorge, we had answered that. I don't know if you missed that poll. Yeah, it should have popped up on your screen. If you missed it, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Let me share really quickly. Have we all had an opportunity to take a look at the assignment sheet?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we have that in mind. You guys know when it is due. We know that this is a 5-paragraph essay. We know that the goal of the argument essay is to persuade and convince. And we also know that argument, the way that we utilize it in this class, it is based on that equation: claim plus support equals argument. So let me do this. As you guys are researching your own papers, your topics, gathering all of the arsenal, the information that you'll use as you make your case, as you're doing that, I want us to think about how you will structure and format your argument. Since we are writing an academic essay, we know every essay revolves around and is centered around a thesis statement. When you guys think of thesis statement, I want you to think of claim. Claim and thesis is synonymous with one another. your thesis for your academic essay will be your response to the question. So where we are looking at, and I'm sorry, I'm moving around a little bit here. So let me, all right, so I have that. Let me go back to this. All right, so what you guys need to know in terms of the, writing a particular argument, we know that the claim or our thesis is the single most important statement we'll make in our argument. Your claim, where you stand on the issue, is paramount to how you build your essay. So let's go back to that equation. And in you guys building your own arguments, what you will need to make sure you include is your claim, and that you're very clear on what your claim is, because that is what you're arguing. Okay, so remember when we looked at the what is argument presentation, and they used an example of courtroom, courtroom debate, right, as a example of traditional argument. Well, we know that when we look at things like courtroom debate, the person is either arguing that someone is innocent or guilty, right? And the evidence that they provide and include in order to persuade or convince a jury will support that particular claim. So where you guys are considering the assignment sheet, name a particular name a particular stereotype threat and its implications on a particular group. The naming of that stereotype threat and the group that it affects, you are identifying a claim. Once you kind of identify what that implication is, so maybe you feel that the stereotype of, doing well in math tends to lead to low self-esteem in, Asian Americans, because, and, so me laying it up, but me laying out that claim, identifying a group, Asian or Asian Americans, identifying whatever that implication is, leads to low self-esteem or feelings of inadequacy. That's my claim. When I attach my opinion or my response to that question, I'm formulating a claim. And in formulating a claim, we then want to make sure that we look up through our research information that can support or prove that claim. Okay? So anytime we attempt to argue, I'm sorry, my crybaby dog. Anytime I attempt, can you get him, please? Anytime I attempt to argue a position, what we are doing is we're making a clear claim, and we are attaching to that claim evidence, whether that is facts, statistics, our logos, ethos, and pathos, in order to persuade or convince. Okay, so I have a presentation that I guess can kind of take us out of here today, or hopefully if I can move through it really fast, then we'll have time at the end of class to kind of talk about what you guys have found in your own research, to perhaps begin considering where you guys are kind of falling in your own research. Where are you leaning? What are the reasons you are identifying for, let's say, why protest is or isn't effective, right? Those are the things that help us build, or help you build, your claim. And once you get your claim built, or you're clear on your position, then you know the research and the evidence that you attach to it in order to persuade or convince. Okay, so let's quickly go over what you guys are doing with this assignment as you're working this week to build it. And if you go to Brightspace now and kind of look, what is this? If you go to Brightspace, you'll see there is no module listed right now. Well, there is a module, but what I'm using to include in the module is the PowerPoint. So we have this PowerPoint. There's another PowerPoint on how to formulate your own thesis or claim. But this week's module really is all about writing, you guys formulating and writing your own arguments. Okay, so today's presentation is taking us from the claim plus support equals argument, and really going in depth into arguing a position, characteristic features that support the writing of an argument. All right, to begin, let's say the writing process of your argument, you want to first of all look at that assignment sheet. So some of you already know your topic, but look at the question that's being posed, okay? When you are formulating your thesis or your claim, you want to directly respond to the question being posed. So for example, where one of the essay prompts asks the question, you know, do you feel that protest is effective in bringing about change, you know, for the issue of racial injustice, right? A way that you can begin with an explicit position is by responding to that question. And you may say, protests are effective in bringing about change because, okay? So either you're for it, it is effective, or it isn't effective, or it's isn't effective, but maybe you want to bring out ways that it could be more effective, right? So we have these various positions where we can fall in our argument. Is your position that you're for it? So are you arguing the affirmative? Is your position that you're against it, right? So, you know, so you're arguing the negative. But there's also an in-between spot. Maybe you agree, but maybe there's a condition in which you're arguing. So you have somewhere to go in terms of your response. But first step in starting your argument is you want to start with a clear position. Where do you stand on this issue? For it? Are we against it? Are you arguing you agree, but? So be very clear on your position. That is the starting point. It says a position stated badly or with no qualifications, it may alienate a reader. If I can sit down and read your argument essay, but I'm not sure where you stand, you will have a hard time convincing me to adopt your point of view. So you want to make your position clear. And the clearest way, again, you guys, is to directly answer that essay question. That helps to set you up for a clear response where the topic is addressed or that controversial issue is addressed, and you can attach to that your position, your overall claim, okay? Qualify your position by using words like many, some, or maybe, but not every position can be stated or supported with absolute certainty, okay? So you want to avoid language that makes generalizations. So maybe you want to say some protests can be effective, you know, on racial injustice, you know, or you want to say many protests, you know, so you want to use, again, qualifying language. Anytime you say everyone, anytime you say people, anytime you say society, it's hard to prove that it covers everyone. So you want to, you know, again, be mindful with that language. It's, again, hard to support any position with absolute certainty. So look at the language you use when you state your position. Lastly, you want to avoid language that may signal you are unsure of your position. Have you guys ever argued with somebody who seems a little bit flaky on where they stand? Have you ever had an argument with someone who's kind of like, you know, wishy-washy with their position?
Yes.
It's very hard to argue with somebody, or it's very hard to take that person seriously. It's like, if you could care either way, then I could care either way. So you want to be really firm. So you want to avoid what I call timid language, like I think, it might be, I believe, I feel like. Anytime you argue, you get the upper hand when you make an assertion. when you present your position as though this is true, my position is right, that forcefulness that you have behind that statement, it tends to be infectious with your reader. If I come at you like, yes, the reason why female athletes are being paid less than male athletes are because X, Y, and Z, and I state it assertively, that tends to draw your audience in. They may want to see, okay, well, what is it to that? Why do you feel that way? But anytime you begin with, I think, I feel, it might be, it begins with an uncertainty that will bleed over into your audience. You're unsure about it. Well, guess what? I'm unsure about it as well. So anytime, again, you are writing your own argument, we begin with position. Where do you stand? Are you for it? Are you against it? You want to make sure that your claim makes it very clear your position, perhaps maybe your reasons, how you plan to argue this. So we want to avoid language such as I think, I feel, it might. And we want to also avoid making any claims or any positions where we are making generalizations. It's not everyone, it's not people. It could be some people, many people may. So we want to use that language, again, as not to alienate our audience. All right. We talked about in chapter 1 of our They Say, I Say book, a lot of the arguments that you guys write in this class will be in response to what others have said on that topic. So it's important to be mindful that you are not the only one who has talked about this issue. You're not the only one who has covered it. So your research should look to what others have said about it, okay? Similar to what you guys did with the discussion board assignment, that cultural appropriation issue. So you guys were given the insight of others. There are other debaters who had looked at this issue and who had talked about that issue. And your response to that assignment, it took into consideration what others have said. So when you write your own argument, you do want to be motivated by considering what others have said. Another thing that I like about researching and viewing other people's ideas on a particular issue, whether they agree with my position or they're against it, is I like to see how they argued it. What reasons did they address? Maybe I could present a reason that hasn't been talked about yet, right? Remember, ethical argument looks at you presenting fresh insight. You are presenting your position or your argument in a way that your reader could learn something. They could perhaps have a different way of looking at it. So it's important that you're kind of not recycling the same argument again and again, but you're attempting to enter the argument or the conversation with fresh eyes, with a fresh perspective, okay? So you are writing in response to what others have said, even if you are only considering your research, okay? You're also participating in an active debate that is ongoing. So sometimes I tell students a part of research could be you interviewing your peers or your friends, asking them what do they think about it. You can get feedback by asking other people. I've had students in the past who have polled social media. They may put the question on social media just to kind of get ideas from other people about what do they think. That's a good invention strategy to help you, again, gather and collect as much information as you can in order to join in that debate. Lastly, in argument essays, the introduction is expected to acknowledge and address other positions directly. So let me repeat that again. When you write argument essays, we kind of don't play around and fluff in the introduction. We don't spend time in our introductions just kind of quoting other texts, asking or posing questions. Our introduction is what gives us the context. So you may bring up the controversial issue. You could even talk about exigence. What's the cause of you writing the paper? Where did your interest or participation in this debate come from? Also, we talked in chapter 1 about summarizing, the art of summary. Maybe you read an article during your research that you want to directly respond to. Well, you may want to summarize and introduce that article or that author's position before presenting your own position. So the introduction in an argument essay is designed for the they say. It's designed to open up with they say before presenting the I say, before presenting your claim or your thesis. So we'll get practice on that. We'll also talk a little bit more about that on Wednesday. But traditionally, how you have written essays, we are approaching it differently when we write argument essay in this class. So the introduction has a role to play as well. Okay. So again, we talked about research. I cannot stress enough the importance of getting that background information. That is the meat and potatoes of your argument. That is the evidence that will support your position and your reason. So you want to make sure you have sufficient research, you have sufficient ideas that you can call on. A lot of times when students struggle to write their arguments or their essays, it's just that they don't have enough information. So keep in mind the importance of research in really giving you the information you need to write your paper. So that information could be any historical background, any definitions, any contextual information, opposing viewpoints, all are useful when attempting to appeal to an audience, right? Consider your audience. What do they already know about this topic or this issue? How much background do I need to give them before I discuss my own position or my own claim? So again, do not take for granted the role that audience plays in argument. You want to consider them as you are doing your research. What type of arguer are you, right? Are you a type of arguer where it takes facts in order to persuade or convince you? Are you compelled by numbers? Are you compelled by information from credible sources? So if it says in this Harvard research or in this MIT research, are you a person who tends to be swayed by that information? So consider what it takes for you to be persuaded and convinced, and give your audience, that exact same consideration. I know my time is winding down. Okay, background information, so we know about that. An argument or position paper is not complete until the arguer is able to address why the information matters. So where we just talked about the importance of an introduction to kind of give context or background information, a conclusion is really important as well in argument, in that that's normally where you reiterate or summarize your main ideas or key points made in an argument, but it's also where you discuss why this topic matters, why it's important, why your audience should care about this particular issue. So you want to share your conviction with your audience and why it matters, not just to them, but to us all, okay? And we'll look at samples where you guys can see this actually, you can see it, what is the word I want to say, in real time in an actual argument. So you can see these parts and how they work together. Positions are only as good as the reasons and the evidence you give to support them. So I've seen students who write arguments, their claim or thesis is really strong. As an audience member reading it, I'm like, oh yes, I can't wait to learn a little bit more about this. But then it kind of falls apart when we get to supporting evidence or details. So do not play yourself short with, again, your research. Once you make your claim, what is going to persuade or convince your audience is the evidence and explanations that you attach to that claim. Okay, so that's your body paragraphs. So again, claim plus support, we've learned that every part of every author's task in arguing is to provide the strongest reason and evidence for your position, okay? Most commonly used forms of evidence in academic context are your facts, firsthand material or research, and this is why I tell you guys, avoid Google by itself, because what you're getting is a lot of secondhand material. You're getting a lot of opinion-based information. So a strong use of your evidence and your research is those academic sites, those research or studies that have been conducted on the topic, interviews, surveys, experiments, historical data. All of this is useful to persuading and convincing, as well as personal experience, right? I tend to be persuaded a lot by personal experience. If a person can show me that they themselves have expertise or background knowledge or experience in it, I tend to be swayed by that experience. So we talked about making sure you have an authoritative tone. Um, Audience members are persuaded by that. It is just a fact. When you speak assertively, when you eliminate that language like I think, I feel, it might be, you tend to, that assertiveness or forcefulness tends to bleed over into your audience. They too are convinced by your assertiveness. So be informed, know what you're talking about. Don't implore your audience to think about issues if you haven't spent much time thinking about it yourself. So you don't want to put the weight or the work on your audience. Don't make them assume what you mean. Don't make them draw conclusions for themselves. Be clear in what your position is. Lay it out for them. Lay out your evidence for them. The work is on you. It isn't on your audience to have to assume what you mean or to really work hard on their end. It's your job to persuade and convince them, okay? So you want to appeal to your audience's values, really seek out that common ground. We know when we think about things such as protests, or we think about things such as what a male athlete, oh my goodness, sorry you guys, we're a little bit over. But when you think about things like that, you want to be aware that everyone in your audience wants equality. I would think that everyone is interested in justice for all. So look at ways that you can use that to your advantage. Anything you hold in common with your audience, think of ways you can use it in order to persuade and convince them. Okay, it's really important. All right, this is a video that I love, but I don't think it's operating. So, all right, you guys, I'm a little bit out of town. I will post this presentation onto Brightspace so that you guys can get an opportunity to really kind of go through it yourselves. But we know about Trace. Let's see. Oh, good. So I made it to the end of it. But with us closing, I'm sorry to keep you guys over. But again, think about what you know about argument. Put yourself in your audience shoes. What does it take for you to be convinced? What do you normally need in order to be convinced? A quick example, as a day-to-day, everyday argument with, let's say, my husband. Well, I know my audience when it comes to him. If I'm looking to persuade or convince him to do anything, he likes information. He likes to know information about it. So let's say I'm trying to convince him to get, let's say, a car. Well, he wants to know who makes the car. He may want to know reviews about the car. He needs information. So he is more of a logos guy. He likes facts. He likes statistics. But I also know that he can be persuaded with emotional appeals. So if I perhaps can kind of point to or show him the value that it'll have on the family, or how it can perhaps, let's say, affect people that he care about or loves, I know I can persuade and convince him almost always. So you have to kind of take an opportunity, put yourself in your audience shoes, but also know, what does it take to convince someone, right? I know whenever I'm presenting an argument with my spouse, facts, logic, logos. He wants to see information. So think about that in terms of when you write your paper. What do I need to make sure I provide for my audience? I know I'm normally convinced by statistics. So let me look for statistics that I can use or incorporate in order to persuade or convince. So, all right, you guys, did you have any questions before we leave? And I see one quickly from, a few of you. Okay, Leslie, you asked, will there be a rubric we can use? I can provide a rubric. Yes, that's a good question. So the rubric, when she asks about a rubric, you guys, she wants to know, how will I grade the paper? And she wants to see that scoring criteria because it'll help her kind of know what to do on the paper. And I'm that type of student as well. So I get you on that, Leslie. I will attempt to post that. But I can give you guys a heads up as far as how the paper will be graded. Claim plus support equals argument. When I grade this paper, I'm looking to make sure you have a sound claim or thesis statement. that directly responds to the question. So are you for it? Are you against it? That needs to be clear. Reasons why you feel the way you do, that needs to be clear. So that is one scoring criteria. I'm then looking at how well you support and develop that claim. So I'm looking at evidence that you attach to it, your research. How strong is it? Did it help in order to persuade or convince? So that's a quick heads up, but I will post a rubric. Let's see, Caesar pointed out, so intro paragraph includes they say and thesis. Yes, Caesar, that's a good summary of that. But we will look at a sample so you guys can view that a little bit further. All right, I don't want to take any more of your time than I have. I'll stay after if anybody has any questions, lingering questions. For homework, because you guys will see there's not much in the module. For homework, I want you guys to read chapters 4 and 7 in the They Say, I Say text. And they're short chapters, so don't worry too much. It shouldn't interfere with your research and what you have to do with the paper itself. So chapter 4 is really important. It's all about the art of quoting. So now that you're gathering this information, how do you then integrate it into your writing? How do you quote your sources? All of that. So chapter 4 helps with that. Definitely read that. In chapter 7, adds a little bit more explanation into how do you address why it all matters. So we talked about that in the presentation. So homework, work on your essays, gather all of the information you need, read chapters 4 and 7, and we'll pick up from there on Wednesday. Okay, try if you can on Wednesday to show me some type of draft of your claim. If you can come with something ready that I can take a look at, your thesis, a draft of your claim. I want to see positions. I want to see how clear it is so I can give any feedback before you guys are let loose over the weekend. Okay. So, all right. I lost a few of you, but that's okay. Thank you guys for staying after, and I'll sit right here in case anybody has any questions. Okay.
Have a good day,
All
Ms.
on
Cole.
Wednesday.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
Thank you.
Yes, no worries. See you, Alejandra. No problem, you guys.
Have a good day, Miss Cole.
All right. Have a good